If you were an RPG fan like me, and a GameCube owner like me, you were starving for RPGs for its entire lifespan. There were a few, yes, and beggars couldn't be choosers on the GameCube. After the Dreamcast stumbled and collapsed coming out of the gate, and Sega bowed out of the console wars, the library of the Dreamcast was gutted and recycled. Not everything would get ported. I don't think anyone was looking forward to a return of Blue Stinger, but among the Sonic games that would find refuge on the GameCube now was a little gem called Skies of Arcadia. I actually knew about this game beforehand, at least in passing, for a few years at that point. It was an RPG that takes place in a fantasy world reminiscent of the golden age of exploration, with flying ships. What I didn't know, and what I would learn later as an adult, is the counterculture that this game was playing to. It effectively wanted to be the anti-Final Fantasy, as it was at the time. The general tone of the entire entertainment industry in the late 90s, be it music, movies, or video games, was getting exceedingly dark and gritty. This change in tone has some nostalgic appeal now, but it was not healthy in the long term at the time, and Skies of Arcadia sought to be the counterculture to all of that. In Skies of Arcadia, you are Vice Inglebard, the son of a pirate captain who dreams of venturing out into the world in a ship of his own. The world of Arcadia is dominated by sky oceans and floating continents and is surrounded by 6 moons. During a raid on an admiral of the Valuan Empire's flagship, you find a young girl dressed in strange clothes, who the Empire had just captured seconds before you showed up. Despite being pirates, you are the Blue Rogues, who fancy themselves as Robin Hood types who steal from the rich to help the poor and downtrodden. This plot element is basically only used as an identifier on who is a good pirate and who is a bad pirate. Bad pirates are the black pirates. Got it? Good. You get an idea quickly that Vice is a protagonist without emotional baggage. He's confident, optimistic, no tragic backstory to speak of, and unlike 99% of other RPG protagonists, both of his parents are actually alive, and the only dead thing about his mother is her name. I don't get why she doesn't have a name. Everyone else on the island has a name. Did she lose it behind the couch? Was it stolen by the Black Pirates? Our partner, Ika Thompson, is actually the one with the 2 dead parents, which is only brought up once in the story and then never again. This is meant to be a bright, happy game, though it's not all sunshine and rainbows. More on that later. Gameplay is largely straightforward in Skies of Arcadia, despite the cinematic flair. Characters will move about in the background and attack enemies to no effect of their own accord based on the actions you select in battle, giving this sense of an actual fight going on that is otherwise missing from turn-based games. Spirit points are passively generated by each character in turn, and by sacrificing a turn you can double up that character's contribution to the pool. Spirit points are used to cast magic and use special abilities, the latter of which are unique to each party member. All magic costs 1 MP, with the primary cost being carried by the spirit points. Weapons have special properties attributed to them based on the kind of moonstone shard you equip, which can be changed in battle on that character's turn in order to exploit elemental weaknesses and level up that school of magic faster. You receive the moonstone shards in very short order in the early chapters, so you are basically free to level up your spell inventory for each character as you see fit. Discoveries are hidden wonders that can be found at key points around the world and even in the main plot of the game. However, you aren't the only one. There are other pirates and explorers behind the scenes who will also be gunning for these discoveries. And unlike YouTube comments, being first here is actually important. If you are the first to report the discovery, you get a substantial bonus. If you wait too long, the reward will be considerably less. At certain points in the game's plot, you are also given dialogue options. These don't do anything except serve to increase the swashbuckler ranking, and you will need to answer every prompt correctly on top of acquiring everything else there is to acquire if you wish to become a legend. There are also ship-to-ship battles, which are slow, but fun and interesting to watch and play. Nearly every ship battle is a unique set piece, with different tactical options to take at the end of certain turns to try to give yourself an advantage or to deny the enemy theirs. Vice's father and captain of this band of Blue Rogues, Dine, understands that the mysterious girl Fina must be of some value to the Valuan Empire for them to target her specifically, so Captain Dine agrees to keep her under their protection for the time being. While Vice spends some time on the observation deck, dreaming about exploring the world and seeing what lies beyond the horizon, a sudden moonstone shower drops a sizable chunk of moonstone on the precursor ruins of Shrine Island. Moonstones are the magic green rocks of Arcadia, being used as fuel for airships, magic focuses, weapon refinement, and even alcohol fermentation. So Vice and Ika plan a salvage operation first thing tomorrow morning. While they are away, the Lord Admiral of the Valuan Empire, Galshian, attacks Pirate Isle, recaptures Fina, destroys Dine's ship, and arrests all the pirates. Vice's mother remains alive, though her name tragically died in the attack. There is no doubt that the Blue Rogues will be put to death, so Vice and Ica plan to head off to Valois and stage Prison Break. Halfway to Sailor's Island, however, they encounter a giant whale. Vice and Ica's tiny boat gets destroyed by the giant whale, and they wake up on the deck of an old rust bucket with a legally distinct Captain Ahab glaring down at them. Drachma, much like the captain from Moby Dick, is hell-bent on hunting down Rocknum, as it is known as, and is irritated that their ships collided, causing him to lose track of the Arc Whale. Without a ship, Vice and Ica are left at his mercy. He agrees to take them to Sailor's Island, but no further. After parting ways on Sailor's Island, Vice and Ica learn of a powerful weapon developed by the shipwrights in Valois, the harpoon cannon. They use this information as leverage to convince Drachma to take them into Valois. First, however, they need an entry pass, which takes several months and background checks to fill out, and we just don't have that kind of time. A Nazar merchant, however, hears our plight and offers us his in exchange for passage back into Nazar territory. It's here that we see a glimpse of the strength of Valois on display and what Vice seeks to overcome. Under the yellow moon, the Valoans have prospered with the gift of electricity, despite the lack of sun and arable soil. With technology on their side, the Valoans have created a massive fleet of advanced steel warships, and the entrance into their nation is guarded by a giant wall of guns that opens only once a day to let ships through. We also see the rogues gallery of Valoan admirals that we will deal with for the rest of the game. And Alfonso gets his comeuppance for abandoning ship and leaving his crew at the mercy of pirates, even if they did let them go in the end. Inside the wall, we see Valois is divided into two districts, Upper Valois, where all the obscenely rich people live, and Lower Valois, where everyone is subject to crushing poverty. We go to Lower Valois, where the shipyards are, because the rich will be damned if they have to live near an industrial sector. Drachma meets up with us in the inn after purchasing and overseeing the harpoon cannon's installation on the Little Jack. He's coming with us into the Colosseum where the execution will take place, which is odd considering how indifferent he is to anything that doesn't involve hunting his whale. As they are planning the prison break, they are overheard by Marco, the kid who harassed them right outside the inn. He thinks we are suicidal for attempting this, but Vice invites him to come watch and break Dinah, to give him a faint glimmer of hope in this gloomy land. In any other JRPG, this would have been the moment Vice sees his dad's death, but this is no ordinary JRPG. He arrives just in time to save Captain Dine and the rest of the Blue Rogues, and 2 boss fights later, we are back underground. Drachma takes the Blue Rogues back to the Little Jack, and Vice and Ica head up to Upper Valois to rescue Fina. At last we see Empress Theodora, who desires nothing more than to rule the world due to an overinflated ego from ruling fantasy Spain. Fina is described as a Sylvite, and she is the key to finding something called the Moon Crystals, which power ancient weapons of mass destruction called Gaigas. Because this is a JRPG, Prince Enrique ends up being the only sane one in the Empire who doesn't embrace fascism like Galshan and Theodora. Fina is taken away, and Vice and Ica appear in Upper Valois just in time to see her loaded onto the rail car bound for that giant wall of guns. They jump onto the train and run down its entire length to where Fina is held. Galshan catches up to them, but before you are guaranteed an impossible boss fight, the Little Jack also appears just in time to rescue you. The Blue Rogues hurry back to the entrance to Valois, and after punching through a ship blocking their way with a harpoon cannon, just barely manage to escape the Grand Fortress before it closes.
Harpoon cannon, fire!
Back in Pirate Isle, which has since been restored and never gets attacked again, Fina reveals that she is one of the surviving members of the Silver Civilization, one of 6 ancient precursor civilizations that each harness the power of their respective moon. Like any precursor civilization, they invested into superweapons and destroyed each other. Then the moons all rained a massive destructive meteor shower that destroyed everything. By searching for the moon crystals, the Valan Empire threatens to restart this cycle, and Fina's mission is to find them before they do. It is at this point that Weiss finds his golden opportunity to set out and explore the world on Drachma's ship while saving it at the same time. This would also give Drachma the opportunity to find Rachma again. Fina officially joins as a party member, completing our primary ensemble, and gives us the last Moonstone shard to complete the Elemental Collection. Maybe it's a little late in the video to bring it up, but I would just like to mention this game's amazing soundtrack. Between them and Nintendo, Sega has always had the more consistently good music between the two. The GameCube re-release got shafted due to compression and fewer sound channels, but the music is still an absolute banger. The Little Jack is one of my top favorite world map songs of all time, evoking this sense of adventure and freedom. As you move between countries, the background instruments even change to ones appropriate for the region. On that note, the music during boss fights changes dynamically, depending on the status of the party compared to the boss. If the party is at low HP or a character is down, the music changes to Crisis. And when the boss is at low HP and the party is in good condition, the music changes to Opportunity. This only accounts for the on-foot boss fights. The ship battles don't have an equivalent. Returning to the discovery board to turn in what you have found at this point, including the bounty on Balter Blackbeard when we were helping the Nazar merchant, will give you a black spot, a mark of death for pirates. Someone out there is hunting air pirates and Weiss is next on the list, thanks to his breaking the Blue Rogues out of custody and escaping the Grand Fortress. This is a subplot added in the Legends re-release that ties into the main story, as well as the Moonfish side quest. This will be covered later. Another important thing to point out is the investment of moonberries. You get your first moonberry after the fight against Alfonso's pet bull, but I held off explaining my methodology behind my investments until I had the full party. You will get showered with a pretty decent amount of moonberries even at the start, but I like to rush unlocking Ica specials. Ica is an all-rounder, but has a particularly high quickstat compared to everyone else. This means she tends to get the first action in the initiative queue, and seems to get an even larger boost if she's using a special. While Alpha Storm and Lambda Burst are handy to have as cheap AoE specials, even if they are Fire Elemental and the red magic spells are cheaper, the main thing I want is Epsilon Mirror. It makes Ica temporarily invincible and restores 10 MP, the only way to restore MP without using expensive items or sleeping at an inn. The proper start of this grand adventure takes us to the sweltering desert of Nazar. The red moon gifts them with fire, but at the same time has turned their floating land masses into scorching deserts, where little prospers away from the scant few oases. Given that all of her offensive attacks are fire elemental, I always had this headcanon that Ica's parents, or at least one of them, are from Nazar. Given that everyone else here is dark brown and she has cream-colored skin though, kind of puts a damper on that theory, but I'm just going to pretend she's from Nazar and be done with it. Access to Nazarad, the proper capital of Nazar, is highly restricted, so we use the harpoon cannon to punch through the rock reefs and head to Maramba, a town on the edge of Nazar territory and where the Temple of Pyron is located, where the red moon crystal is held. Once stepping foot on the docks, Drachma ditches us, and we are left to try and find another way to get to the Temple of Pyron. The party asks around for someone to offer an airship, but to no avail. They take a rest in a local tavern equivalent and weigh their options. The local belly dancer, Belena, happens to recognize Weiss as the air pirate who escaped Grand Fortress, and offers the party a ride on her personal airship to the Temple of Pyron tomorrow. The next day, Belena explains to the party that she wishes to assist them on their quest in order to put a stop to the wars that leaves hundreds of families dead or orphaned on the streets. And so we are off to the Temple of Pyron with this absolutely not a party member. Belena's airship is not powerful, so there will be no ship battles or backtracking through the rock reefs for the time being. Our only available destination is the Temple of Pyron. Belena waits outside while Vice and the others head into the temple to search for the moon crystal. Everything here is fire elemental, so switch to purple and hope that you remember to invest in purple magic. It'll make the dungeon a lot easier. On that note, the elemental magics in Skies of Arcadia is built on a yin-yang relationship between the 6 moons. Purple corresponds to red, yellow corresponds to blue, and green corresponds to silver. At this point, it's worth getting at least 2 levels into each magic category for each character, particularly Aika and Fina. Vice can get by with just the healing magics and maybe a buff or 2, and Drachma's magic growth is the lowest in the game, so he could just focus on elemental superiority or as an EXP buffer, as the entire party's contribution is pooled and shared. Dungeons in Skies of Arcadia are a pretty standard experience. This isn't Legend of Zelda. The puzzles tend to be little more than taking a side route to activate a switch, then backtracking to the newly opened location. Naturally, all dungeons have some sort of boss at the end of it. Also starting in this dungeon, and continuing with us in each one to the end of the game, there is a single chest containing a valuable treasure and guarded by a stand-in for the Mimic, Xivalin Bane, a master thief and treasure hunter. He's not particularly dangerous except for his burst attack, and he doesn't really improve beyond his raw stats. And he's always fire elemental, so just take him down quickly, it doesn't matter. After killing the rockworm, we finally get to the inner chamber where the red moon crystal is held. Fina explains that the moon crystal is tens of thousands of times more condensed and potent than a moonstone, and it is this kind of power that is required to activate the Gygas. With the red moon crystal safely secured, we head back outside to Belena. It should honestly not come as a surprise to anyone that Belena tricked you, and was actually Beleza in a thinly veiled disguise. Pun intended. To be fair, Beleza only appeared once in a cutscene to us, the player, while Vice and the others have never seen her before or even know what she looks like. Turns out, though, that most of her story was actually true. She did lose her family in the Nazir-Valoan War 20 years ago, and that is why she seeks the moon crystals, because she hopes that in the hands of Valoa, they will unite the world and have a lasting peace. In the hands of a fascist. Beleza uses the moon crystal to activate the red Gygas Rakumen, which turns out to be part of the Temple of Pyron itself. Vice and the others escape into the dunes in an attempt to get out of its range, but before it has a chance to hit them with its death laser, a cannon shot from out of nowhere causes it to go wide. Drachma had a change of heart and returned for the party. It helps that when he was leaving Nazir territory the night before, he happened to catch sight of a particular Valoan flagship hiding among the rock reefs and pieced together what was going on. The Blue Rogues retreat to the Little Jack and prepare to fight the Gygas. I should preface this with a warning. What comes next is an extremely difficult boss fight if you don't know what you are doing and you kind of coasted up to this point of the game without understanding mechanics or didn't adequately prepare yourself in town when you still had a ship of your own. Like what I did when I first played this game 20 years ago. Fighting a Rakumen is basically impossible. It has about 100,000 HP and you will only ever do chip damage, even with the harpoon cannon. The key to avoid getting killed by its red ray is to attack it on the turn that it fires, causing it to go off balance and the shot to miss you completely. Eventually they realize fighting it is a pointless cause, so they fall back and regroup. They instead focus on attacking Beleza aboard her flagship, the Lynx, to force her to put the Gygas back in the ground. Fighting the Lynx, turns out, is almost as much an uphill struggle as fighting Rakumen. The Lynx has a unique ability where she will fire cannon shells imbued with magic, dealing additional damage. Best you can do is apply whatever support magic you have to your own ship, and that's about it. One of the best ways to deal with Beleza, depending on your number of resources, is to turtle until you get an opportunity to fire the harpoon cannon, which will bring her down in 1 or 2 hits. After you defeat the Lynx, Beleza puts Rakumen back in the sand where he belongs, and you take back the moon crystal, that magical cannon of hers, and her ship's engine. Beleza reveals that the Valoan armada has already made its way past the South Ocean to the land of Ixotaka. but the only way there is through the South Ocean, which has a strong current that blows eastward back into mid-ocean that our tiny fishing trawler won't be able to handle. But that's why we nicked her engine. You would think we were heading to Fantasy Africa. You would be wrong. It's actually more comparable to South America in the Mesopotamian region, because Valois is based more off of Spain than it is England, and Spain definitely messed up all three Americas in quite a few ways. But we aren't here to talk about that. Or maybe we are, because despite Overworks insisted on making a more lighthearted game, they sure did lean hard into the parallels of the real-life colonial era. Getting to Ixtaka is a real schlep with that strong headwind. You'll more than likely lose progress quite a few times between every random encounter, the common enemies having instant death spells and trying to find Beak Rock, the Sky Anemone, and that damn Kama Rock. But eventually you get to Ixtaka. A hard counterpoint to the barren scorching sands of Nazar, Ixtaka under the Green Moon is a verdant land lush with vegetation, wildlife, and mineral resources. And Valois is here exploiting the hell out of all of it. Our first stop after pillaging this land of its discoveries is Horteka, where we are greeted by men in masks who thankfully don't have a language barrier. They ask if we are Ketia, and since we don't know what that is, they just assume we are more people from the east and demand we leave. Everyone turns a cold shoulder to us wherever we go, but look around town long enough and you will eventually find a crashed ship full of children from our side of the world. Speaking to the eldest of them, Hans, you learn that the ship belongs to the Blue Rogue Sentime, a pirate engineer who is famous for adopting orphans and raising them as his own. Valois has captured him and are forcing him to make weapons. We bum some moonstones off of him as our own fuel supply is running low after sailing that treacherous South Ocean. This enables us to leave, but we still need to get some answers from someone in authority around here about what this Ketia is, and that we're not here to rob them of their natural resources. We eventually find the wrinkliest of men, identify him as the Elder, and present ourselves to him. While he does not approve of our presence here more than any of the other natives, he has the common courtesy of explaining that Ketia is their protector god that banished the giant that threatened Horteka long ago. They believe that Ketia, or his messengers, will return and save them if they are threatened again. They made the mistake of trusting the Valoan Empire when they showed up, there was a small genocide, and now their people are enslaved. Weiss insists they fight against Valois and seek the moon crystal of this land, and his earnestness prompts the Elder to reveal where the king is hiding. With little else to do here, we head back to the ship and make our way north to the king's not-so-subtle hiding spot. How is that hiding? Before we can get close to his floating treehouse, we run straight into Admiral De Loco of the 5th Valoan Armada. He's burning down the entire forest with the giant axe body spray in an attempt to find the lost city of Rixus, where the Green Moon crystal is presumably kept. Because it's not like all these trees would be nice to have around. Maybe one of them could cure cancer or something. Once he gets word that we are in the area, he turns that goofy-ass flamethrower on us. Compared to the fights with Verkumen and the Lynx, however, the Chameleon is a pushover, especially if you remember to upgrade the Little Jack's armaments before leaving port in Maramba. Even the flamethrower isn't that scary against our wooden boat. Side note, I keep forgetting that you are actually able to dodge his flamethrower, but I never got footage of it. You'll just have to imagine dodging the fire. Admiral De Loco retreats with his tail between his legs back to Moonstone Mountain, and the Blue Rogues meet with the King of Ixtaka. He thanks us for saving his forest, and we explain to him that all we want is the moon crystal. He suggests searching for the lost city of Rixus, but the only person who might know where it is the High Priestess Sapa, who has been taken by the Valoans and subject to forced labor in their sacred mountain, which is Moonstone Mountain. Fantastic, more sidetracking. Of course, because we're a JRPG protagonist, we are obligated to beat up the Valoans and rescue the locals. Oh yeah, might as well also rescue that Blue Rogue Sentime while we're at it. It's just another day on the job, really. Our first steps into Moonstone Mountain triggers an alarm. De Loco knows we are here for a Sapa and closes the door behind us. Alfonso is also here and out for revenge for our humiliating him and having him demoted for his own display of cowardice. De Loco, however, controls the mine itself, and it's naturally full of traps. That is to say, it's full of trap floors, and you need to trigger some of them in order to progress. It's not a fun or interesting dungeon, mostly being a bunch of hallways and catwalks, but at least you'll get a sizable boost to your levels and wallet for the trouble. Progressing further inward, we eventually find Sentime, a goofy-looking guy with a big nose and white coat. He fixes the elevator for us and goes on ahead to disable some of the traps. Nothing he can do about the trap floors we have to trigger in order to progress, though. Oh well. Further into the mining facility, we finally find Asapa. He recognizes Fina as a Sylvite, but doesn't elaborate any further on this for the time being. We reach a bloodstained chamber that DeLoco had made to kill any slaves that tried to escape. Before he could trigger the trap, however, Alfonso barges in from the other side with an even larger armored bull than last time. The bull continues to be not that big of a concern, it's just the same boss with bigger stats. With the bull defeated, Alfonso is left incapacitated, and DeLoco decides to kill him in the death room too. Before his Ramon Salazar shtick comes to fruition, however, the spiked ceiling jams. Sentime sabotages the gears to stop it. With DeLoco incapacitated, and Asapa and Sentime liberated, we return to the King of Ixta'taka to finally get answers about the lost city of Rixus. Finally. Turns out, Asapa doesn't know much outside of a vague hint about a great bird and a kneeling golden man. If you were diligent in finding the discoveries in this region, you should have found them already. Both need to be discovered in order to find the gates of Rixus, which can only be found at this point, counts as another discovery, and can only be opened with the 2 keystones we found at the Great Bird and the Golden Man. After slotting them in, we open the way and get into the lost city of Rixus proper. We ride a magical elevator high up enough that they are surrounded by the clouds and the air is difficult to breathe, presumably putting us up in a mountain range where airships cannot fly. The lost city has been lost to time, still bearing the scars of the Rains of Destruction. The rumors of it being a lost city made of gold are quickly dashed, though that golden man we found to get here is clearly made of gold. Maybe you could loot that thing. It's too big for the little Jack. As they look around, Aika sees someone in the clouds. Someone else is here. And no, Zivelin Bane doesn't count. They continue to see the mysterious figure as they move further into the city before chasing them to the temple at the very peak. After dealing with the local bird problem, the party finds no moon crystal in its shrine, so they examine the temple mural. After the Rains of Destruction, someone forgot to seal away the green Gygus Grendel. It rampaged through the forest and continued to kill people, and it was the Sylvites who returned in order to seal it away again, who became known as Ketia. This would explain why the Ixtatakans thought Fina was Ketia when we first arrived. But then how would they know about the Sylvites in the first place if the city was actually lost to time? And more importantly, where's the moon crystal? Plot twist, the Ixtatakans had actually found the lost city of Rixus and its moon crystal shortly after Valua's arrival. They intended to awaken the Gygus to drive out Valua, but Asapa was captured before he could find its resting place. And now while you are away chasing fake ghosts, he managed to track down Grendel and the king is activating it as we speak. Grendel pops out of the ground and delivers a haymaker to some unfortunate cruiser. As we return to the Little Jack to deal with this, DeLoco returns with his chameleon. He targets the king's ship in an attempt to force him to deactivate Grendel like what we did with Beleza, but his prototype Moonstone cannon knocks him out, causing Grendel to start behaving erratically and making him even more dangerous than before. Before we can deal with Grendel, DeLoco intercepts us, but the new array of weapons is still not as big a concern as you'd think. Just try to avoid getting hit by that Moonstone cannon. With DeLoco out of the way, we square off against the second Gygus of the game. Despite the improvements we have found since Maramba, we're still no match for a real fight against the Gygus. It is possible to reduce Grendel to 0 HP the old-fashioned way. Hell, I did it. But you don't get anything special from it. You have to wait until Grendel starts having another seizure to fire the harpoon cannon at it and cause it to fall into a canyon, trapping it for good. We return to the king, who has since come to his senses about using apocalyptic precursor weapons to solve the problem of Spanish colonialism, and gives us the green moon crystal. Valoa has fled from the region and tore down their iron net leading into North Ocean that they erected for no apparent reason. North Ocean leads back into Valoa territory behind their capital city and where we can find the Yellow Moon Crystal, so that is our next destination. Along the way, we encounter another black pirate by the name of Gordo the Round. He's an obese gourmand pirate who attacks ships for their food. He boards us, and after a fight against his surprisingly robust stat block, he backs down. He recognizes Drachma and mentions something about revenge against Rachnum for his dead son and crew, but Drachma threatens to throw him overboard if he doesn't shut up. The rest of the journey to Valoan territory is a silent and tense one. We eventually find the Maw of Tardis, which is a giant iron seal in the ground. Presumably this is where the Yellow Moon Crystal and its respective Gygas are kept, but there is no way to get through the seal. As they examine the site, they get attacked by Valoan soldiers. Turns out, even with the Yellow Moon Crystal in their backyard, the Valoan Empire, and their biggest and loudest guns, can't punch through the seal, leaving it inaccessible to everyone. We are also told that there are fewer Valoan ships in the area at the moment, because the Armada is currently amassing to reignite the war with Nazar by launching a surprise attack on Nazrad. He also mentions a giant arc whale that has been destroying their ships in the area, and that one of the admirals is currently hunting it down. Drachma realizes that his fated duel with Rachnum is close at hand, so now it's our turn to assist him. There's nothing that can be done about the Yellow Moon Crystal for the time being, so we decide to hunt down Rachnum. We drop anchor for the night and wait. In the middle of the night, Vice finds Drachma on deck holding a small wooden box. He shows its contents to Vice, revealing that it is full of feathers. His son, Jack, used to collect them back when Drachma was a fisherman. Rachnum appeared out of nowhere and attacked their small vessel. They didn't stand a chance. The entire crew died, Drachma was badly wounded, and Jack fell to his death in the great abyss below. This is why he hunts Rachnum, for revenge for his dead son and crew. Finally, Rachnum's signature fog rolls in, and we prepare for the battle. Couldn't be any harder than the 2 fights with Gygas that we had so far, right? Rachnum appears, and trailing behind him are Valoa Armada ships led by the Monoceros, aka the Unicorn, the newly christened flagship of the recently promoted Admiral Ramirez. He's no concern to us, however, and we shoot down one of his cruisers in the way to cut a path to Rachnum. As we land a direct hit on the arc whale with the harpoon cannon, Ramirez comes in from behind and starts shooting at us. Taking down the Blue Rogues that have tabled 3 Valoan admirals, 4 if you count just barely escaping from Galshan's clutches, and are currently in possession of 2 moon crystals ends up being a much higher priority to him. The little Jack is instantly shot to hell and is about to fall out of the sky. Vice convinces Drachma to get to the lifeboats and that they'll have another chance to fight Rachnum in the future. Subverting the ending to Moby Dick, they get to the lifeboats, but after Vice, Ica, and Fina get in, Drachma pushes them both out. Staying on board the little Jack, the last thing we see of him disappears into the fog. The fun is not over, however, as Ramirez begins firing on the lifeboats too. Vice's lifeboat is hit and is carried off in the wake of Rachnum's jet stream. And Ica and Fina are blown in another direction.